Alright, listen up. You think you know American history? You think you've got it all figured out from those dusty textbooks and boring documentaries? Wrong. Dead wrong. Because what I am about to tell you is the real story of how America went from being literally ignored by everyone to becoming the most powerful nation on planet Earth. And trust me, the journey is way more insane than you ever imagined. Here's the thing, nobody tells you when Columbus stumbled onto the Caribbean in 1492, he wasn't just confused about where he was. The man literally thought he'd found a shortcut to Asia. Imagine being that confident and that wrong at the same time. He's standing there on some Caribbean island, looking at people who've been living there for thousands of years, and goes, "Yep, these are definitely Indians, mate. You're not even close. You're not in India. You're not near India. You missed Asia by an entire ocean." But did that stop him? Absolutely not. He sailed back to Spain and told the king and queen he'd basically discovered a new route to the spice trade. Classic overselling. And here's where it gets properly mental. Spain and Portugal. These two countries literally drew a line down the middle of the entire world and said, everything on this side is ours. Everything on that side is yours. Can you imagine the audacity? Just two countries dividing up the entire globe like they're splitting a pizza. No cap. That's the most based power move in human history. Portugal got the route around Africa to Asia, which was actually valuable. Spain got, well, they got everything else, which at first seemed like they got the short end of the stick, until they realized their half had something way better than spices. Gold. Mountains of it. Silver. Rivers of it, all down in South and Central America. The Spanish hit the jackpot. They found civilizations with so much precious metal that it made their wildest dreams look modest. So naturally, they got busy conquering everything they could find. The Aztecs, the Incas. Everyone was getting the Spanish treatment. Meanwhile, up in North America, crickets nothing. The Spanish sent one expedition up there in 1539. Took one look around, saw no gold, no silver, just a bunch of land and some native tribes, and basically said, "This place is absolutely rubbish. Let's go back where the treasure is." So for over 100 years, North America was just sitting there, ignored, forgotten. The real estate opportunity of the millennium, and nobody wanted it. The English had actually checked it out back in the late 1400s, even before the Spanish found Florida, but then they just went home and didn't think about it again for nearly a century. When they finally decided to give colonization a proper go, their first attempt at Roanoke in 1585 went so badly that the entire colony just vanished, like completely disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to them. They were probably the only colonists in history who managed to lose so badly they got deleted from existence. But the English are nothing if not stubborn. They tried again at Jamestown in 1607, and this time it actually worked. Then the Pilgrims showed up at Plymouth. Now, let me tell you about the Pilgrims. Because these people were absolutely no fun at parties. They were so hardcore religious that they made gambling illegal. They banned Christmas. Christmas. Who bans Christmas? These people were taking the absolute piss with their rules. But here's the twist. Their stick-in-the-mud attitude actually worked. People kept coming, loads of team. Before anyone knew it, the entire East Coast was covered in British colonies, all filled with people who apparently hated fun. Meanwhile, the French were doing their own thing, claiming all the land in the middle of North America, just massive chunks of territory. By 1754, you've got the British on the East Coast, the French controlling the middle, and it's obvious what's about to happen. War. Glorious, expansive, completely avoidable war. The French and Indian War kicks off, and despite having only 60,000 people versus the British colonies' million-plus population, the French thought they had a chance. Spoiler alert, they didn't. The British absolutely demolished them. At the same time, there's this massive war happening back in Europe, because apparently one war wasn't enough. When the dust settled, Britain had won everything. France had to give up Canada. They had to give up half of Louisiana. They tried to be sneaky and give the other half to Spain before the war ended. But Britain still ended up controlling most of North America. Britain was now the big dog, the top nation, and they were also completely broke. Wars are expensive, turns out. So Britain looked at her colonies and thought, you know what? Time to collect some taxes. The colonies were not having it. Not even a little bit. Britons, like, hey, we just won this massive war for you. Show some gratitude and pay up. And the colonists fired back with, helped us, mate. We're the ones who do all the helping. You just show up, make demands, and expect us to pay for your problems. Plus, how are you going to tax us when we don't even get a vote? That's proper tyranny. The arguments got heated. The heated arguments turned into fights. The fights turned into a full-blown revolution. 4th of July, 1776. The Declaration of Independence. America is born, right? Not even close. That was just them saying they wanted independence. They still had to actually win the war, which took another 5 years. 5 years of fighting the most powerful empire on Earth. And when they finally won, when they'd actually achieved independence, they discovered they had a massive problem. The government they'd created was an absolute shambles. A complete disaster. The 13 colonies were basically 13 separate countries pretending to be united. It was failing harder than a New Year's resolution by mid-January. The founding fathers looked at this mess and went, right, this isn't working. We need a complete do-over. So they wrote an entirely new constitution, created a totally different federal government, and somehow it actually worked. In 1789, George Washington became the first president of the United States. But here's the thing. The USA at that point was tiny, just that little strip along the East Coast. All the land to the west belonged to Spain. So how did America get bigger? Enter Napoleon, this absolute mad lad over in France who decided conquering Europe wasn't enough. He wanted an empire in America too. He made a deal with Spain to get Louisiana back. But America needed the Mississippi River for trade, and they were terrified of what Napoleon might do if he controlled it. So, President Jefferson sent diplomats to France to buy New Orleans. Who's to city just at one port? But Napoleon had bigger problems. He was planning to invade Britain, and he realized if he kept Louisiana, America might support the British, which would be catastrophic for his plans. So in the most insane real estate deal in human history, he offered to sell them everything. The entire Louisiana territory, all of it, for $15 million. Jefferson's diplomats couldn't believe their luck. They'd come to buy a city and walked away with half the continent. America had just doubled in size overnight. That's not a country expansion. That's a country duplication glitch. And America needed that space because the population was exploding. The average American family had 7 kids. 7. They were breeding like it was a competition. All those children needed somewhere to live. So Americans started moving west in massive waves. They'd show up on unclaimed land. Well, unclaimed by other white people anyway. Plant a flag and declare it theirs. The Native Americans living there would protest, saying these were their hunting grounds. And the settlers would essentially respond with, yeah, we're your hunting grounds. Past tense. Cheers for the land, mate. In 1819, America bought Florida from Spain for $5 million and established a border with New Spain. 2 years later, Mexico won independence from Spain, and suddenly America had a new neighbor. Mexico controlled these massive northern territories, but couldn't really manage them. Too much land. Not enough people. So Mexico made what might be the worst decision in the history of international relations. They invited Americans to settle in Texas. They actually asked Americans to move in. Within years, the American settlers completely outnumbered the Mexicans. And surprise, surprise, Texas declared independence from Mexico. The Republic of Texas wanted to join the United States immediately, but there was a problem. Texas allowed slavery, and at that time, America was trying to keep a balance between slave states and free states. So, they said no. Texas had to wait around as an independent country, which honestly must have been awkward. Then in 1845, America changed its mind and let Texas join. This led to disputes about where exactly the border was, which led to a war with Mexico, which America won. And suddenly the United States owned massive chunks of what used to be northern Mexico, including California. Mexico got $15 million, which doesn't seem like nearly enough for losing half your country. Then the British, who still controlled everything north of the Oregon Territory, looked at how America was expanding and decided maybe it was time to establish some boundaries. They agreed to split the Pacific Northwest, with Britain keeping everything above the 49th parallel and America getting everything below it. In just 50 years, through incredible luck, shrewd negotiations, and one pretty ugly war, America had gone from a small country on the East Coast to a massive nation stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But wait, there's more. Because America also passed the Guano Islands Act, which is exactly as weird as it sounds. If an American citizen found an island that was unclaimed and covered in bird poop, they could claim it for the United States. Why? Because guano was valuable as fertilizer. This law is still active, by the way. So if you're tired of paying rent, go find yourself a poop-covered island and plant an American flag. Sorted. Then gold was discovered in California, and everyone lost their minds. The gold rush brought hundreds of thousands of people flooding to the West Coast. America was thriving, peace with its neighbors, land from sea to shining sea, natural resources for days. Everything was perfect, except for one massive, catastrophic problem. Slavery. The country had been arguing about slavery since its founding. The northern states had made it illegal and viewed it as a moral evil that needed to end everywhere. The southern states had built their entire economy around it and weren't about to give it up. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, the southern states panicked. They were convinced he'd abolish slavery, so they decided to just leave. They formed their own country, the Confederate States of America. And suddenly the United States was facing a civil war. The American Civil War was brutal. More Americans died in that war than in any other war in American history. Brother fought against brother. Families were torn apart. Cities were destroyed. But when it was over, the North had won. Slavery was abolished, and the United States was united again. Lincoln, the president who'd held the country together through its darkest hour, was assassinated just days after the war ended. The same night, another assassin tried to kill the Secretary of State but failed. It was an absolute tragedy that almost got even worse. With the war over, America started looking around for more land again. Russia, of all countries, offered to sell Alaska. The Secretary of State negotiated a price of $7 million, even though he'd initially planned to offer only $5 million. Russia probably could have gotten more, but they were worried about losing it to Britain in a future conflict, so they sold it fast. America now owned this massive frozen territory in the north that everyone thought was worthless. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Oil, gold, natural resources. Alaska turned out to be an absolute steal. Then America's attention turned to Hawaii. American businessmen had essentially taken over the Hawaiian Islands and asked the United States to annex them. The president at the time said no, believing America shouldn't use its power to take advantage of smaller nations. Noble sentiment. But others argued that if America didn't take Hawaii, another power like Germany or Japan would, and they'd use it as a base to threaten American interests. The debate came down to this: should America mind its own business, or should it mind its own interests? The answer came in 1898 with the Spanish-American War. Cuba was fighting for independence from Spain, and American newspapers were filled with stories about Spanish atrocities. When an American warship exploded in Havana Harbor under mysterious circumstances, that was it. America told Spain to leave Cuba or face war. Spain declared war. Big mistake. Massive mistake. America absolutely crushed them. In a matter of months, America had captured Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. The Spanish Empire, which had begun with Columbus over 400 years earlier, was effectively finished. During the war, America also annexed Hawaii because it had become strategically important as a naval base. After the war, Theodore Roosevelt became president after the previous president was assassinated, and Roosevelt was a different breed of leader. Young, energetic, and absolutely obsessed with American power. He built up the second largest navy in the world and wasn't afraid to use it. When America wanted to build a canal across Central America to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, Roosevelt made it happen in the most American way possible. He asked Colombia for permission to build across their territory in Panama. Colombia said yes, then changed their mind. So Roosevelt supported a Panamanian independence movement. Panama became independent and immediately gave America permission to build the canal. The whole thing took about 3 weeks from start to finish. It was the diplomatic equivalent of a smash and grab. But with warships, the Panama Canal was finished in 1914, the same year World War I began. America now had a massive navy that could move between oceans quickly. It had territories in the Caribbean and Pacific. It had natural resources, a growing population, and an economy that was starting to rival the European powers, the country that had been ignored for over a century. The land that Spain had looked at and decided wasn't worth bothering with had become a legitimate world power. And that's just the beginning of the story, because what America did in the 20th century, the wars it fought, the enemies it defeated, the rivals it outlasted, makes everything I've just told you look like the opening act. America went from ignored backwater to global superpower in less than 400 years. That's not just luck. That's not just timing. That's a combination of geography, ambition, and some of the most audacious decisions any nation has ever made. So the next time someone tries to tell you they know American history, ask them about the Guano Islands Act. Ask them why the English waited 100 years between exploring North America and actually colonizing it. Ask them how Napoleon accidentally helped create a superpower by selling land to fund a war. He did eventually lose anyway, because the real story of America isn't just about freedom and democracy. It's about opportunism, expansion, and taking advantage of every single opening that presented itself. That's American history. Not the sanitized textbook version, but the actual, chaotic, absolutely mental story of how a collection of ignored territories became the most powerful nation in human history. And if you think that's wild, just wait until you hear about what happened next. Because we haven't even gotten to the world wars yet, and those make everything I've just told you look tame by comparison. But that's a story for another time. Now you know the truth, and you're about 300% smarter than everyone else. At your next dinner party, you're welcome.